When was the last time you went to a wedding? A couple of weeks ago? Yeah. A few years ago? 3 years ago? Oh, 2 weeks? Right. Last year? Well, Anita, in September we got 2 weddings on consecutive Saturdays. It's really inconvenient, isn't it? One of the second wedding is one of our godsons getting married in Bristol. The wedding the previous Saturday is down in South Wales, and I baptised the bride some 28 years ago, and she wishes me to conduct her wedding service. If only it was that simple. We've got the legal ceremony on the Friday and the wedding ceremony big event on the Saturday. I've got to come up with 2 addresses.
One on your day off?
Yeah, one's on the day off, yeah. I haven't put in my fee yet. I don't think I can, but when these 2 weddings came in, we thought, are they on the same Saturday? It's like buses, isn't it? They come along in pairs. But when you went to the last wedding, if it wasn't family where you knew who you were sitting with, did you go and look at the seating plan and work out where have I been placed? And if so, do you start looking at the top end, feeling that you're important, or do you start as far from as close to the bottom as possibly you can be? I was talking to a couple of people yesterday afternoon, and I remembered that when I was working in South Wales, one of my church members was quite a sporting chap. He played for Newport. That almost counts as sporting. He was a cricketer with Glamorgan. He was a scout with Tottenham. Good man. And when his daughters got married, I conducted both services. And on the first occasion, I found I was sitting at the table at the reception with the chairman of Newport Football Club. The following year, when his other daughter got married, I was seated with different people. I have a feeling it may have been due to the fact I said to the chairman, I believe Newport are getting an all-seater stadium next year. Someone's giving them a 3-piece suite. That may have had something to do with it, but you just don't know. Jesus was invited to a meal with one of the Pharisees. Why did they invite him? Perhaps because he was the talking point of society. And they could put down on their CV, invited Jesus of Nazareth to dinner. Was it something like that, or were they trying to see how he was going to behave? Could they find a way of tricking him? But he told the guests who were there the parable about where you take a seat. Do you take the seat of honour and get shoved down? Or do you take the lowest place and hopefully get moved up? The Jewish people felt themselves as top dogs, and the Pharisees felt themselves as top dogs amongst the top dogs. And Jesus came to share that this is not the way of God. God looks at things and God looks at people differently. There was a message through what was written to the early church as well. For there were Jewish converts to Christianity, and there was Gentile converts to Christianity. And the Jewish converts to Christianity felt themselves to be better than the Gentile converts. This parable had a message not only for those who he was talking to on the day, but it was recorded because it had a message to the early readers. How do you rate yourselves? The Pharisees were perhaps looking to get Jesus as their on their friends list. I've mentioned Facebook before, and people have several hundred friends on Facebook. Who's got the most here? Many of you are wise enough not to do Facebook. I have had something like 80 or 90 friend requests, which I've never responded to, because I couldn't care less who was doing their ironing when. And I don't need friends who are on the other side of a computer screen. The real friend is the one who is with me, particularly with you when you're in need and in trouble, when life is difficult. Jesus actually wasn't a bad friend to go for if you wanted a friend who will be with you during times of difficulty and pain and suffering. And Jesus is the one who is to be sought as a friend in our lives. And he's not concerned about our social status. He's not concerned about how rich or poor we are. The parable that he then went on to talk about, says, when you give a luncheon or a dinner, don't invite the rich and the powerful. Invite the poor, the crippled, the lame and the blind. Jesus wants us to attend his banquet. He wants us to be friends with him. He wants us to know his love, his care, his support. He wants us to express our faith as the people of the past express their faith, trusting in God through the difficult times, the uncertain times. If you read through Hebrews chapter 11, you have a list of people of faith. Sometimes it's called why is it the brain jumps? The Westminster Abbey of the Bible. Westminster Abbey is where all the rich and famous and the poets, etc., have been buried. Hebrews 11 lists the saints of the Old Testament who trusted God even when they were not necessarily seeing what they were hoping for. Don't look for the place of honour. Recognize that Jesus wants you to accept him as friend. He will take you whatever your state of life is. He will offer to you companionship, help and support as a true friend would. But within the life of the church, we can find ourselves playing social, spiritual pride. We can think, well, I'm more spiritual than you are. Or you may feel, I am not as spiritual as you are. Sorry, Maggie, I wasn't really looking at you. Sally's in we were having a conversation before the service. I'm saying it was cheaper to sit on the front stalls, but she said, if I sit over there, do I get it cheaper because it's a restricted view? But she's gone for the straight-on view. Do we play spiritual pride? Do we think that we are more spiritual than the person we sit next to? Or do we feel spiritually inferior to the person we sit next to? Neither is appropriate. For God takes us as we are. He desires us to change and to grow, but not to compare ourselves to those amongst whom we sit. Because if we do that, we then begin to compare ourselves to those who don't even come to church. And we can feel superior to them. Many, many years ago, it was so long ago, Anita and I weren't even married. I had been invited by the leader of a prayer group that met in the Catholic convent where Anita and I met. That's an interesting story, which I'm not telling you today. I was invited by Jeff to lead worship in all sorts of different places. And for a time I was leading worship in a series of seminars in Canterbury. And while there, I got introduced to Brother John. Brother John was a monk who told me a story. I got a bit confused a couple of months later, or a couple of weeks later, when I was told that Brother John had become a father. He'd been priested. That's fine. I could cope with that. But Brother John told me this story in Kent, the Garden of England. As many of you know, at harvest, what is the one thing I want on the table of the rail? An apple. I grew up in a community with lots of apple trees. And at Harvest Festival, there were apples all over the place, and I polished them all. But Brother John told me this story about a father and a son. The father owned an apple orchard. And one day in July, he took his little son for a walk through the apple orchard. The little lad looked up and saw all these green apples hanging from the tree and said, "Daddy, Daddy, they look lovely." He jumped up, plucked one from the tree, bit into it and spat it out. He said, "Daddy, Daddy, that's horrible. Chop down the trees, plough up the field and build a motorway." In September, Dad took this little boy for a walk through the same apple orchard. And up on the tree were these bright red apples. And the little boy looked and said, "Daddy, Daddy, these look lovely." He jumped up, plucked one from the tree, bit into it. And it was so sweet and gorgeous. He said, Dad, I'm really glad you didn't take my advice to chop down the trees, plough up the field and build a motorway. And Dad said, "Son, so am I." But what you need to realise is that those apples were just ripe enough in July to be how they are today. What matters in our spiritual journey is not whether we are riper spiritually than the person we sit next to, sit behind, sit in front of, see in the street. What matters is, am I as ripe in my faith today for what God wants to do through me tomorrow? That's a personal thing. Am I growing in my ripeness of faith? That's what matters. We stop playing superiority games in faith. We stop playing spiritual pride. That was what the Pharisees were about and the Sadducees were about. Jesus is a friend who welcomes all, wants us to grow in relationship with him, at his pace with us, not at his pace with our neighbour. Are you ripe today for what God wants you to do tomorrow? If the answer to that is no, then do something about it. That's the only important question. Where am I with Jesus, and where is Jesus with me?